All right. Wow. A little technical difficulties there, but we're back and streaming, and I'm watching to see that we're back online. Let's see what I see here. This is the fun of broadcasting live, right? You get to see all this craziness as it occurs, right? So yeah, a little technical difficulty. Looks like we got that fixed. Let's move forward. And in case it got cut off, premise of the show today is rules are for thee and not for me. And the way we combat that is being we the people. So that's, what we're going to talk about today. As always, thank you for joining me today. Please subscribe if you're new, watching it later. Please like these videos. It helps me in my search engines so that more people get to see the videos. And of course, share the video. Share it on Facebook. Share it on Twitter. Share it, email it to a friend. But please share it. There's good information here, and I'm hoping you're finding it entertaining. As always, I'm running for Wisconsin's District 7 U.S. House of Representatives seat in the general election. I've been running since the special election. It's been exciting and fun and, learning a lot. That's the best part of this, and that's the great thing about this country, is that we can participate in processes like this, and whether we're all out there in the limelight or we're back in the shadows and we're trying to just build a following, we get to do that, and we get to learn what the process is. And as we continue to take part in campaigning and the elections process, hopefully we gain more and more exposure and limelight, and makes it easier to get somewhere and hopefully get elected. So I'm enjoying it. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy the concerns they have, in the sense that people here in Wisconsin are willing to talk about what their concerns are, talk about being patriotic, talk about being an American, talk about the Constitution. And those are all things that are really important to me. And that's the message I really try to carry is when I started this adventure in September last year, I came out in my press release and said, I'm here to listen. So as much as I'm here to talk a lot, I'm also here to listen, and that's why I continue to ask people to call into the show, and our number here is 715-352-0801, because I'd love to listen to what you have to say. It's important. Everything you have to say is important. It doesn't mean I'm going to agree with you, but that's what the show's supposed to be about. We're supposed to be able to have that civil discourse, or we can have that patriotic throwing tea in the harbor, whatever your position might be. And that's why the show's called Here's My Issue. That it's an opportunity, if you call in, to say, hey, here's my issue, and share it and talk about it, and then we can move on. And hopefully people see that and want to talk about it more, right? And carry a message that maybe gains momentum, and some results are derived from that. And that's always the discussion I have, is that we can sit here and talk about it all day, but if you're not willing to take some action, contact some people, it's just a waste of time. Don't even waste your breath. Just move on. Then just deal with the day as it comes. When the government takes over, and when they shut you down, and when they close your business, and they tell you can't go to church, and all and on and on, just live with it. And that's why I'm running. I don't want people to think I'm just going to stand around and just take it. I'm going to speak up. I'm going to take action, and I always have, and I always will. And that's the message I want my kids to understand, is that you don't get anywhere without taking some kind of action. So on that note, I have a couple videos we're going to listen to this morning. We're going to listen a little bit here to Ben Shapiro as a lead in to some other topics we're going to review. So let's listen to Ben Shapiro here this morning.
This caused all sorts of controversy. Now, frankly, I'm sort of perturbed at the controversy. The reason being, I don't think that Fauci is a bad guy. I don't think that Fauci is out to ruin the American economy. I don't think that he is a malign influence on President Trump. I think that Dr. Fauci is an epidemiologist, and his job is to be an epidemiologist. His job is to be a doctor of public health when it comes to pandemics. His job is not to balance all of the risks and rewards. When you go to a doctor and you look for a diagnosis, usually the doctor puts before you a fair number of choices. And it is now your determination as to which choice you seek, right? The doctor puts before you have cancer, God forbid. And the doctor says to you, okay, so here are the choices. You could have a surgery. Here are the risks and the possibilities. You can have chemotherapy. Here are the risks and the possibilities. Or depending on your age, maybe the best thing is to sort of let it take its course. If you're 85 years old and you have prostate cancer, maybe the treatment is actually worse than the disease. And now you have a bunch of choices in front of you. It is not the doctor's job to make the final determination. When it comes to public policymaking, our elected officials are elected to make exactly these determinations. Why? Well, because they're answerable to we. They are answerable to us. They're answerable to we, the people. The fact that we are now looking to sort of delegate all decision-making authority to the experts is the tail end of the progressive era stupidity that suggested that if we just gave all power to the quote-unquote experts in government, then everything would magically be solved. Now, experts are good for what experts are good for. Experts are good for knowing a lot of things about one particular subject, but they're not famous for knowing lots of things about lots of particular subjects. If you ask Dr. Fauci about Keynesian versus Milton Friedman-esque economics, my guess is that he wouldn't know much more than the average guy. But if you ask him about disease vectors, then he probably knows a lot more than the average guy. Asking him to be the sole policymaker is really foolhardy. And even Dr. Fauci knows this. And so the sort of move from the left to appoint Dr. Fauci the head of government when he is not the head of government, or to use him as a club to wield against elected officials, whom, again, are answerable, all of whom are answerable to us. Right? The fact that people on the left want to do that, and then the fact that people on the right are responding to that by blaming Fauci, as though Fauci is to blame for lawmakers abdicating their duty and just pointing to Fauci and going, well, he's going to solve all of our problems. It's stupidity. I mean, frankly, I think that Dr. Fauci would be the first person to say that it's stupidity. He is there to provide medical knowledge and guidance. And then it is up to us to determine what risks we are willing to undertake as a society. What this means that when people like Dr. Fauci, when public health experts testify publicly, they are always going to testify on behalf of caution. Because their job is first do no harm on a public health level, not an economic level, not on a freedom level, not on a constitutional level, not on a governmental level. Their first job is to say, how do we save the most lives? Well, in the middle of a pandemic, the easy answer, if you're not looking at any of the other factors, is stay home until we have some sort of therapeutic or until we have some sort of vaccine. But of course, there are other factors to take into account when it comes to public policy making, such as the fact that we may never have a vaccine, or a therapeutic may not be all that effective, and the fact that 30 million people have lost their jobs in the last 6 weeks, and that there are countervailing costs to people losing their jobs, losing their livelihoods, 100,000 small businesses shutting down. This is where it is up to our public officials, the people who we actually elect, our elected officials, to weigh the evidence that Dr. Fauci is providing and his advice with the evidence provided by economists with the values that we hold dear as a nation. I mean, just take a different example for a second. In a wartime, let's say that you were to ask a public health expert in wartime, what is the best policy? Well, public health expert's job is to save as many lives as possible. And so the public health expert would say, best strategy here is probably not to do the war, right? No war is good because that means few people are going to get shot and killed. But if you are an elected official and it's World War II, you know that there are going to be a certain number of people who are going to have to risk their lives on the beaches of Normandy. And this is not to suggest that the public health experts are wrong about everything. This is to suggest that everybody has their own specific area of expertise, and to pretend that this means a broad area of expertise is really foolish. And in a republic, we rely on the notion that a diffuse level of value judgment among the American population is going to be better than any one individual's values. That the American people overall are going to be wiser about weighing all of these factors in balance when they elect people than just one guy who's part of the bureaucracy. We'll get to what Dr. Fauci had to say yesterday, because in that light, I don't think what he had to say was all that controversial. But I think there are politicians who are completely looking to abdicate responsibility for their actual decision-making role in American politics right now and simply shouting data and science and public health official. Look what Fauci is saying. Look what Birx is saying. Look what all the scientists are saying. Okay, that's not your only job. You're supposed to take all that into consideration, and then you are supposed to weigh all of the values that are currently under consideration. Plus, you're supposed to determine the level of certainty that public health officials are expressing about the future generally. Because experts may be more expert than you, but that does not mean that they have 100% certain knowledge of the future. And we'll get to all of that in just 1 second. First, I want to tell you about this thing that...
So, I mean, that short dialogue is amazing in terms of what it brings to the table. Decision making is supposed to be from a neutral position, not a biased position, not a liberal position, not a conservative position, and that you can't have one person in control, which brings us to the decision by the Wisconsin Supreme Court ultimately, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, the important thing that comes out of this is that it pushes, like I've been harping for weeks on, to have not only the governor involved and our health organization for the state involved, but also the legislature. But the concern is, and like Ben is alluding to, is that our legislature has done nothing. I mean, so they brought it to the Supreme Court. They still haven't taken a position. So you can't collect data and do nothing. You have to take data and then do something. And you have to take that data and you have to take all of the factors, just like he was mentioning going to war. I mean, the health officials will tell you, well, everybody's going to die when you go to war. Well, yeah, they are. And why are we going to do that? Well, because we have to go to war. I mean, we have to defend ourselves, and people die in wars. We know that. They're horrible. And we do everything we can to avoid them, but we don't go hide in a hole. Right? I mean, you can't win the war if you get into a foxhole and just say, okay, now what? Right? So there has to be some balance between what we know is going to happen and how we mitigate those losses. And of course, we do that regularly with our strategy and those things. Again, back to, war. Well, the same process has to be applied here. We know lots of things, and we're being given lots of things that aren't true. So some are true, some are not true. Right now, all these different organizations are talking about misinformation. Well, I'm going to share a video with you about just the most blatant misinformation that's coming out of the people who are supposedly telling us what we need to hear, or telling us why they're experts, or telling us why the information is correct and what we're saying is wrong. And there's countless examples of the data being manipulated, which is misinformation. So Facebook and YouTube should be stopping providing them the outlet to spread misinformation until they correct it and do something different. I mean, they're doing that all over the place. They're censoring people for saying things about masks. They're censoring people for saying things about staying at home. They're censoring people for wanting to go out and protest. But yet, when there is physical and documented data about the officials they're trying to protect, that they're lying to us, then that's just fine. That's okay. So that doesn't work. That doesn't get us the information we need. That just leads to this: the rules are for thee and not for me. They're just trying to control our actions, and they're trying to move whatever agenda they have. So we have to be conscious of this, and we have to push our legislature to make decisions. And again, for me, our legislature here has been totally lacking. They could have multiple bills already in front of the governor, which would allow the process to move very quickly and combat our governor's comments today about how, this is just going to get caught up in bureaucracy. And he's right if the Republican-led legislature right now is going to do nothing. I mean, so great. We're going to, throw all kinds of facts around. We're going to say we need to do it safe, and we're going to spend days. They're going to blame technology, just on and on and on. And then they're not going to do anything. And we're going to wonder why. I mean, look how long it took for unemployment to hit the streets after the bill was passed in Congress. I mean, it took 4 or 5 weeks to actually get that process going when people needed that money even before the bill was passed. So we're going to take 4 or 5 more weeks now to figure out the plan, and we think people are going to wait for that. No, in fact, I'm pretty much confident that we're going to see continued stories of businesses opening up, defying any social distancing, taking on their own responsibility, being adults. The 5 on the Fox talked a lot about you got to be at the adult table here. We're not going to throw around baloney, and we're not going to have pie in the sky ideas here. Odds are that we're going to see the people who have been doing what they're doing in terms of protesting and wanting to open up, just taking that on and doing it. And there were a number of videos I've seen today that restaurants are talking about opening. They don't have masks on. They're in the bar. They're all working. There's no masks, and yet they're talking about being safe and opening up. So I mean, it's just like what are we doing? So I mean, on that note, let's talk about masks for a second. I read an article from The Hill that talks about how the government is just simply moving whichever direction the wind blows. So, we were told masks don't work. Americans shouldn't be wearing them. At the same time, government officials were telling us they needed personal protective equipment for doctors. And by the way, PPP is not what people are talking about. So if you hear somebody say that, they're just saying it wrong. It's PPE, okay? Personal protection equipment. I use a lot of it in my industry. The PPE, including masks. And their whole premise for that is the reason they were telling us not to wear them is they were so concerned that the medical community was going to run out. So they told us all not to wear them. Okay, so don't wear them. The masks are important for someone who's infected to prevent them from infecting someone else. But the mask has to be able to do something. This whole article talks about surgical quality masks. I mean, there are masks that are designed to filter certain microns and protect that from getting out when they're performing a surgery or they're around somebody. In the same sense, though, it helps protect them if they're in the room with somebody that is infectious. But when someone's infectious, in a lot of cases, they have even bigger protocols. They put them in bubbles and where they put them in HEPA filters, and they're constantly cycling the air to keep that down. I mean, it all comes back to, how serious this is. But they're wearing equipment that's designed to do that. Not fabric masks you made on your sewing machine. So what is it we're saying? We're saying that there needs to be science and data, but we're not providing any science and data. The data says that COVID-19 micron levels about 0.07 to 0.09. The N95 masks don't even filter to that level. I mean, they're basically saying you're going to have to wear a canister style mask to keep anything from getting in. And if you're going to do that, then in order to use it properly, you need to go get fitted. We talked about this in a previous episode. So now you got to get fitted. So the information is just on and on and on. How, it's just whatever fits whatever they're trying to accomplish. It says CDC recommends wearing cloth face coverings in public settings where other social distancing measures are difficult to maintain. But why would they even say that? I mean, if you have COVID-19 and you're breathing out, that is going right through the mask. Those cloth masks don't stop it. It never will. There's no technology in your mask that you put and you made on your sewing machine that's going to really keep that. This is just a comfort issue. It's not really accomplishing anything. It might stop some of it, but as you continue to wear it in the day and that bacteria and virus is building up on the mask, you're just blowing it out. So, in order to make really good decisions, people need really good data, which then leads me to my point today that data needs to be driven by neutral parties. Fauci should not be in charge of producing the data that they give us. The government shouldn't be in charge of the data they're using and they're pushing on us. There should be an outside group, just like when you have a business and you're doing your accounting and you're a publicly traded company, we have an audit. And they come in and they audit the data. We need a neutral group auditing the data that's being given to us. And on that note, here's some support for why that's true. I couldn't even believe this when I saw it, but I've been saying it since the very beginning. Listen to this today with Laura. Laura's got a great segment that, as usual, that we all need to hear.
And now COVID truths, frauds, and tyrants. First, the truths. Now, I told you about 7 weeks ago that hydroxychloroquine was likely saving lives. And now another study confirms that conclusion. And it was conducted by NYU's Grossman School of Medicine, where researchers looked at 932 COVID patients who were on hydroxychloroquine along with zinc and azithromycin. They concluded that the triple combo, they were 44% less likely to die from the coronavirus. Good news. Take that, FDA. Second piece of good news, the two states that opened up first, Florida and Georgia, both are continuing to see declines in COVID infections. Well, shocking to liberal haters, but not to you, because we told you that the virus was probably weakening and that people would innovate to stay safe. And now on to the frauds. Let's start with Pennsylvania Health Secretary Rachel Levine, who weeks ago ordered nursing homes to admit COVID-positive patients. Well, while thousands of residents saw their loved ones and family members die, Levine quietly extracted her own mother out of harm's way, reportedly moving her from a nursing home to a hotel.
My mother requested, and my sister and I, as her children, complied to move her to another location during the COVID-19 outbreak. My mother is 95 years old. She is very intelligent and more than competent to make her own decision.
I'd rather have her mother be health secretary of Pennsylvania, frankly. Well, once again, it's liberals like Levine and her boss. It's good for thee, same old hypocrisy. The rules are for thee, but not for me. While the little people have to suffer under their bad decisions, the connected and the powerful always have an escape hatch. And that's what happened there. And since we're on the fraud patrol, we have to point out Illinois' own state health director, who at a recent press conference just casually admitted this.
If you were in hospice and had already been given, a few weeks to live, and then you also were found to have COVID, that would be counted as a COVID death. Even if you died of a clear alternate cause, but you had COVID at the same time, it's still listed as a COVID death.
Okay. The CDC, the state health offices in these blue states, no wonder the president doesn't trust their numbers. And by the way, whatever happened to one of the worst flu seasons on record? Why are those numbers not tabulated and actually segregated out, so not lumped in altogether in some cases with the COVID deaths? And that brings us to our tyrants. And for this category, we stay in Illinois because billionaire Governor J.B. Pritzker apparently thinks that he can save the people of his state by threatening them, especially in counties that decide to go their own way and get back to work.
The state already provides a lot of support for cities and counties. And so I would just suggest that there are a number of enforcement mechanisms that are available to us. And I don't want to utilize those.
Oh, I'm sure he doesn't. Maybe Pritzker will invite all the unemployed in his state to live in his new $50 million Caribbean getaway. I'll wait for that. But what would a rundown of, let's say, gubernatorial tyrants be? Where would they be without Washington State's Jay Inslee? He's decided to take cues from China by empowering an army of government contact tracers to monitor you.
Listen to this.
I mean, assist you if you get sick.
Yeah.
And if you resist, don't worry, the government will make sure you have zero reasons to leave home.
If they can't get a friend to do their grocery shopping, we will help get them groceries in some fashion. If they need pharmaceuticals to be picked up, we can help make sure that they get their pharmaceuticals.
Isn't that reassuring? And finally, we save the least appealing for last. Michigan's Gretchen Whitless Whitmer. How to persuade your students to support this economy-crushing shutdown? Attack their First Amendment rights and call them bigots.
Certainly not an exercise of democratic principles where we have free speech. This is calls to violence. This is racist and misogynistic. These protests, in a perverse way, make it likelier that we're going to have to stay in a stay-home posture.
Now, aren't you just clamoring to have her a heartbeat away from the presidency? Or maybe as your attorney general, won't that be a fun world to live in? Now, any of these blue state control freaks, well, all of them, they need to keep away from our children and away from our businesses. Heck, I don't want them near my dogs at this point, given what they've been saying and doing. It's long past time for this shutdown to end, period.
So, I mean, these are the preludes to what's coming to us
and
as we move forward. I mean, I'm hoping that these states like Michigan, where you have what you could be calling a tyrant trying to control everyone, telling people who are trying to protest, making the kinds of comments you heard her make. It's ridiculous. And hopefully the legislators or someone else will take the precedence that was set here in Wisconsin to take that control away from those governors and put it back in the hands of the people through their legislators. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, saying the governors need to have this control taken away from them is completely legitimate and is the right thing to do. We don't need one person carrying the kind of message we're hearing like in Michigan and even in New York, and providing misinformation, as you heard, in terms of the data. So we're going to use data, science and data to make decisions, but we're going to manipulate the data so that it supports our decisions, okay? I mean, that's as classic socialist, dictator, fascist, communist, whatever you want to call it, as it gets. The data needs to be raw and neutral, and then decisions need to be made. And everybody needs to know what that true data is. As we've talked about, Laura talked about, where's the flu data next to the COVID data, next to other death data? You can call it other death. I mean, we don't care. But let's see how many people are dying of things not related to COVID each day against the flu and COVID. Why can't we see that? And why have we never had a test for the flu? It just baffles me that we have this test that we can test for COVID-19, but we've never had a test for the flu. And with what you're hearing here, what happened to the HIPAA Act? Where did the HIPAA Act go? Why do I need to tell you I have COVID-19? If I want to go to my doctor and I want to get checked because I'm not feeling well, that data is private unless I release it. Who's authorizing the release of my medical data or these other people's data for that matter? That may be the reason we didn't have a lot of flu statistics. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. But somehow magically during this outbreak, there's no checks and balances on our cell data. There's no checks and balances on our Facebook location data. Somehow all this COVID data is running around like a muck and everybody's just sharing it. I mean, why would you even want to go get tested? It's nobody's business. I mean, that's the way it has to start from. And then you have to talk about why you would want to have the control to release your data. I mean, I don't call into work and say, I have cancer today, so I'm not coming into work. I call in and say, I'm sick, I'm staying home. That's it. Now, if it goes on prolonged amount of times, then sometimes your employer requires you to tell them why you're not coming to work. But maybe it's just as much as the doctor saying, yes, Michael's sick, he's going to need a few more days, so therefore he's not coming into work. I mean, again, they're not allowed to know the fact that I have a particular issue. They're only allowed to know that I am sick and I'm seeing my doctor, and until my doctor says I can come back to work, I'm not coming back to work. And that's perfectly legal. And that's the way it's supposed to work. So we need to start reining in this data. And again, that goes back to my conversations about, Tiffany and Duffy were just happy to let us all be unrepresented. I mean, Tiffany could have easily taken the role and released his seat in the Senate and allowed a special election to occur the same time he was running, so that now that he's won the seat exited by Duffy, who did the same thing. I mean, really, he couldn't have waited until November. I mean, he's got plenty of time to do other things, but he couldn't have waited till November, and we could have surely used his representation all through this crisis. But, it was more important for him to go work for CNN. Tiffany, the same way, it was more important for him to make sure he had a check than make sure that there is representation for his district when he won the district and take the risk. So again, the rules are for thee and not for me. So now he's going to Washington next week. He's basically done. There's no representation for that district until the election in November, and then until they get sworn in January. But he's okay with that. And you should be like, why were you okay with that? Just because he needed a check. The Supreme Court decision is one that I hope will carry a message through to the rest of the states, to, again, as I've been talking about for several weeks, is getting the decision-making back in the hands of the legislatures who represent the people and forcing those legislators to make a decision. So people understand how they're going to be historic leaders during historic times. I really feel like they're afraid and they're not making those decisions. And I'm hoping that they'll move towards creating a neutral body. I hope here in Wisconsin, they'll work towards making a neutral body that will be able to pull data together in a way that's more neutral, and then everyone can see it, and then our legislatures can support the decisions they're making. But until then, we're just going to continue to have people manipulating the data. I mean, so is it just me, or do we need to change something here? I mean, the new normal. Well, the new normal needs to be, hey, before we're making any decisions, we need neutral data, and we need all the data, and we need all of you people who want to control us out of that. That's what we need. Food for thought today. What's the food for thought? Which lives matter? And I'm going to leave that open-ended for now, because tomorrow's show we're going to address that concept. So, which lives matter? Your life matters to me, and I'm happy you joined me today. And if you did, please subscribe. Please like the video. Please share the video. And please, as always, try to join me at 9 o'clock or somewhere in between, and call me anytime at 715-352-0801. Stay safe, stay strong, stay vigilant, and we'll see you tomorrow.